Myself, Dr. Manjunath, on behalf of INFA, welcome you all for today's webinar. It's our great pleasure to invite all MC members, CEOs, managing directors, business heads of INFA companies, members of various subcommittees, and especially HR professionals. We faced new challenges during COVID and entering to new era of business post-pandemic, if I can say post-pandemic. Business, as it was opening, presented umpteen number of challenges in terms of life situation of employees, way of engaging them, training them, working from home, and combined with technology to sustain the business along with now the changing legal framework. All aspects have changed dramatically. HR space has also changed to cope up with this situation and played very pivotal role during these challenges. Today, we take you through these aspects, how HR space is changing in new normal and how code of wages may impact us. Without much further delay, may I request and invite our President of INFA, Mr. Vijay Teng, for opening remarks. Sir, please.
Thanks, Dr. Manjunath, for a very refreshing introduction to this very vital webinar. I think you've very well set the context and the tone for the program. Well, good morning to all of you, the leaders of the industry and the participants. We at INFA have always been trying to focus on topics which are of tremendous importance, and more so during the last 1 year of close to 1 year of pandemic. I'm sure you would recall we started with a very interesting program, Ties Without Ties, which focused on managing ourselves and our organizations in the most stressful situations. That was followed by focusing on animal nutrition, emerging challenges and landscape. And I think that was again very well received by all the members. Very recently, we focused on AMR, which is not only a global but also a national area of focus. And we tied up with IAVR, and we had very fruitful discussions and outcome. But I believe today's program is very vital, very crucial, because it focuses on a very important element and resource, not for our organizations, but for the industry as a whole, and that is people. And I believe all forward-looking organizations always focus on their people. I'm delighted that a very active and dynamic HR committee with very vibrant members led by Dr. Manjunath have come up with this idea and worked very hard to put in a lot of information together and share with all of us. I'm sure this will be enriching for everyone, and we will be able to take home some messages which can be implemented in our organizations. Friends and members, your managing committee is actively engaged with the various regulatory bodies, and we will keep on updating you. The latest one was the focus on Atmanirbhar, developing Atmanirbhar India, and what animal health industry can contribute. So we'll keep on updating you. I'm sure that you will have a wonderful program. We look forward to your very active participation during this event. Kindly share your questions in the chat box so that this program can become more live. The good part, not inviting any expert but we have an experts from within the organization, within the INFA, and you will be hearing all of them. We have also received very interesting suggestion from some of the members to undertake Mercer compensation benchmarking study. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank all for giving this suggestion. I will be taking it to our managing committee, and I'm sure we will be taking it forward and generate a document which will be very useful to the entire industry. So thank you very much, and congratulations to this wonderful team for putting up this wonderful program in place. Looking forward to your active participation. Over to you, Dr. Manjunath.
Thank you so much, and thanks for the encouraging words. And I'm sure we will take up all these issues. Let me introduce speakers today, very resourceful personalities who are eventually part of HR subcommittee. Mr. Devendra Dikshit, graduate in civil engineering with masters in personality management. Over 28 years of blended experience partnering with business, covering entire ambit of HR, organization development, industrial relationship, manufacturing, and corporate platforms for both domestic and MNC organizations with a global interactions. Presently, he is a director of HR in Kemin. So I don't want to interrupt in between the presentations. So let me introduce the second speaker, Mr. Umesh Kulkarni. 20 years of experience in HR across healthcare, fine chemical, manufacturing. 10 years of leadership positions in HR business partners in corporates, engaged in driving HR strategy in alignment with business requirement, building performance of culture, leadership development, management of change and transitions. And presently he is working in Virbac Animal Health. Over to you, Mr. Dev.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manjunath Vijayji Teng, Managing Committee of INFA and HR Subcommittee, and good morning to esteemed audience present to this webinar. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and we would like to present this webinar into two parts. The part one is what is getting changed in terms of the plain HR, and then second is how it is getting impacted with the sweeping changes coming in terms of the government mandates in law, employment, and labor. We remember that it's not very far, just 1 year back, exactly at the same time, that we heard about the COVID first time in our life. And I remember sitting in Chennai office of Kemin, we were discussing with the management, and then my first reaction and not the response was, oh, this is a China thing, and nothing happens to India. Another few days gone, and Kemin being a global company like many of you are from, so mandates started coming in. What are the plans for business continuity, business crisis, and things like that? And then I said, nothing to worry. India is a very strong immunity-based country. We live in a pathogenic environment, and the summer is coming up in another couple of months, so no virus will stay there. Beating all that, the virus came. And ultimately, I also eventually said that, dekhenge, jab aayega tab dekhenge. We will see when it comes. But let me share you, and all of you would agree with me, that it had changed our life completely in just less than 365 days. The way we live the life, the way we conduct the business. And of course, HR is no exception to it. So if I look from the HR standpoint of view, the slide is transiting slowly, so please give me a sec. Are you able to see this slide clearly? Dr. Manjunath, can you confirm, please?
Yes.
Thank you. So the HR stuff in terms of the change world has actually transformed completely. You take any aspect of the HR, from talent acquisition to learning and development to working from home to conducting the performance review, looking after the safety and well-being, and even include corporate social responsibility. Everything has practically undergone literally a transformation and fueled completely by the technology. As an industry practitioner and a colleague of all of you, we would be presenting more practical views as to what is exactly changed in each of these aspects going forward. The first thing that comes to the mind when it comes to the HR is actually the talent acquisition. But surprisingly, there are two trends that are coming up very fast. And the trend that we know is that we would like to hire the people now virtually. Virtual has become the way of life. Virtual in action are the number of programs happening by various institutes as to how do we conduct the business virtually. But in terms of talent acquisition, I clearly see that while recruitment is on, but we are hiring less. And when I say that we are hiring less, it does not mean that how we rationalize the workforce. But it also means that we are interested in upskilling and upgrading our own talent within the organization. And not only that, we are also asking our own people to take upon the role into the different functions, even at higher responsibility, either vertical or in the horizontal line. And that is something that COVID had changed here. If you see that virtual recruitment is the way of the life now, and here's the survey conducted by the most credible social media, LinkedIn, with certain remarks, right from Infosys to number of people. It is being said that more than 70% people are saying that virtual hiring is going to be the fact. And more than 70% are also saying that we are not going to go back to our pre-COVID position where we do a lot of processes in terms of the in-person interview. When you look practically, what's happening in this space is that you need to attract your talent virtually. And that obviously means that you have to attract and do some strategy in terms of the social media. And we all know how much role the social media play nowadays in our life. So be it a LinkedIn, be it a Facebook, be it an Instagram, be it a Twitter, but even leaving behind, you want to create your employer brand, maybe on some of the employment portals, maybe like Naukri.com, Monster.com, Timesjobs.com, or number of other agencies where you are party to it. You need to also develop maybe some of the strategies in terms of websites like Indeed or Glassdoor, and there are many to name. These are not the only one. This is not a comprehensive list. The whole message is that you need to be present yourself with your culture, with your brand onto the social media rightly so that you can attract the right talent. And of course, there are advantages and there are challenges in terms of virtual hiring. The very, very visible advantage is you recruit in a less time. You have a lot of objectivity in hiring because you have very competence-based. You're not able to meet the people in person. You see the way you see me, and then you ask a question in terms of competence and may hire. This also means that you can attract the top talent because you would be able to assess the top talent objectively without bringing our biases, without bringing something called as halo effect. It also means that you can bring a diversity into your recruitment. And when I say diversity, I must mention for a minute that India is completely a family-based culture across India. We may be, in fact, we have said that we are the integrity into diversity. We are one of the country which adopts the democracy with a lot of diversity adopted maybe last 75 years. By and large, our women community, and when I say diversity, it actually comes with the diversity, equity, and inclusion, all three together. And COVID is helping today, despite having so much of technology and despite having so much of modern world, still the woman in India has a dual responsibility of managing the home culturally, taking care of the parents, families, and everything, and at the same time make a career. In the whole process, most of the women community, or many of them, do take the career break or forget their careers. They don't work in their passion that they would like to be otherwise. And COVID provides an opportunity to even get them on board because they can still work from home, even a part-time, and we'll speak about it. So virtual hiring is a fact, and these are some of the benefits. there are challenges as well. The challenge is, how do I make my assessment in terms of cultural fit? How do I engage the new person when someone we hire virtually? And how do I retain that talent? How do we create a one culture of your company? The existing people itself find it difficult, and we're talking here of the new people. So with these exciting challenges and opportunities, I think virtual talent is going to be the way. The next topic in terms of the virtual talent acquisition is also onboarding or induction. And many of us will always have a very good comprehensive induction program. And now everything is shifted, virtual, app-based. In fact, to attract the talent, many companies are moving ahead, creating the virtual tours of your labs, your manufacturing premises, your service offices, to create that aha feel. And there is always a time when someone wants to join you, they resign and they join the new prospective company, something called as notice period. And that's where the HR role is becoming more and more important. They're doing a lot of frequent check, assisting on the concerns. COVID is still here and going to stay here. We don't know how long and how hard and how complicated it would be, but we'll have to navigate the way through. And then how do we bring the person aligning with the company culture? What are the methods that we use? How do we create a trust with the new employee? How do we involve the new person very early? Load with a lot of new responsibilities is the diktat that the new normal is bringing in when it comes to an onboarding. So all in all, when I look at talent acquisition, I clearly see a 5-6 pillars which are not very unknown, but are taking a very prominent place. And you can see, the last 2 pillars, which is more of presenting your employer brand on the social media. And the last thing which is emerging, coming up, which has already come into some of the developed countries, is that growing application of the artificial intelligence, machine learning, and emerging technology to back the recruiters in making the right decision. In the other side, you have a data-driven decision making with the help of technology. And the most important is the candidate's experience. Whatever way you recruit, be it a virtual, be it in person, what is the candidate experience? And that's going to be really a brand query. When I move next, I also see a lot is happening in terms of productivity. Now, each one of us being the leaders, we go through something called as strategic planning. And when we look at strategic planning, we always look at what's our going to be the workforce in the next 1 year, 3 year, 5 year. And in view of COVID, you are required to think very differently, very innovatively. People have responded, what could be their short-term needs, including when rationalization of the manpower, salary cuts in some places may not be much popular into a life sciences and animal nutrition and health, but otherwise, yes. If you look the tourism industry, if you look the hotelier industry, if you look the automobile industry, aviation industry, a lot of other industry, they had no option. And they immediately went for what is needed immediately in long run, in the medium term. They're looking at how do we work boundaryless. They're also looking at how do we create a contingent workforce, and even how do we train our people to conduct the business in the new normal using the technology. So the norms for workforce planning, the norms for productivity are fastly changing, and HR need to partner business into the whole process. There's also a lot when it comes to employee in terms of performance management. All of us work to really expand our potential and be very happy and successful both. So how do the expectation in terms of performance management that can be managed in the eyes of employee as well as the employer? We see earlier the performance management by and large was more of a 1 or 2 discussions in a year, maybe a half yearly, maybe an yearly. Few of you may have an ongoing conversation, but now we are forced with the COVID to look after the new system that checks in a lot of frequent conversations with our employees, letting them know how they're doing, where they need to improve. We call it as constructive and supportive feedback. And how do we embrace in each of our interaction with each of our colleagues a thinking, a feeling of gratitude, a thinking and feeling of empathy. How do we develop a trust? How do we empower our people and manage the expectation in terms of performance? And let me share some of the practical views as we are moving to the April 1st, which is generally a large share of the industry do the annual increments in April, March. We also have July, June. We also have October, September. We also have January, December. So everything is existing in this industry in a mixed pattern. But as I look for the April, and then I talk to our own employees and few employees in other industry, they are asking the question. The employee's question is, sir, tell me that if the industry was completely impacted and we were not even able to move out of our home, not in our own colony for 3-4 months, though I have a capability and I have a consistent performance record, how company is going to look at my capability? Would they give me some weightage on that, or will it just let go? So what I mean to say that HR need to keep their eyes and ear onto the ground to really see what is the employee pulse and then respond appropriately, keep the manpower to keep the workforce highly motivated. The large focus now is coming on engagement and well-being. This is not a new topic, but engagement has taken really a center stage, because what differentiates one company to another company is that how much your workforce is engaged for the shared and aligned purpose of the company. And one of the way to engage is, of course, a communication, and that plays a major role. Now, all of us know that we used to have a lot of annual conferences, sales conferences, longevity awards, open hall meeting, some kind of forums of cross-functional speak up and speak loud forum. So you do all those in terms of digital. But while you are doing it, don't get to be the slave of this digital transformation at the same time. So the challenge is, how do we emotionally connect with our existing workforce and the new workforce coming in? And something what is called as water cooler conversation, a term that I learned in last 1 year, as to how do we informally discuss. I used to be in habit where I am in the office, I'm surrounded by my colleagues, we go to the cafeteria, we get a smell, aroma of the tea, coffee, biscuits, lunches, we shout with each other. So there is a culture that is existing in person. And now every effort is done by technology as to how do they do it virtually, including the augmented reality as well. So how do we socially connect our own employees? How do we maintain that emotional connect is also a challenge. I won't be surprised that if I see later on, maybe after 6 months, 1 year, an emerging trend that you may have in HR a position called as head of remote. And I was surprised when I was talking to someone that they're thinking very seriously, and that head of remote job is actually to look at employees as to how much time they spend on the screen. And by doing that, how much fatigue, stresses, domestic strain they're bringing when they're working remotely, and how do we mitigate those risks as well. Coincidentally, while I was talking in the morning to our own colleagues here on this call, I also read a news that in Japan, the industry is hiring the head of loneliness. There's one impact that is coming out of COVID is that all the people are working, they're feeling very lonely. They're not socially connected. And this loneliness is taking a very negative approach to the life and the frustration. The Japanese industry think that it can even lead, unfortunately, to even committing a suicide if people are not socially connected. And therefore, there are specialized skills like business analysts, data miners, data analytics. On the HR part, there are specialized skill people coming like psychological counselors, then head of loneliness, head of remote, head of disruption, smart to fail kind of a capability, and all that would help us developing the engagement and well-being. Learning and development, which is my next topic in short, has completely transformed. I mean, I have not seen such a sea change in one sub-function of an HR, and which is equally important. Working remotely, one topic that we have been discussing. Talent acquisition is another topic that we are discussing very often. And the third topic is the learning and development. And I'll tell you, we have not gone only digital way, but our partners have gone digital. And they have created the experience as if we are working together, taking the training together in person. You have the break sessions, you used to go to the different rooms and talking some concept, then you come back, you collaborate, you present that concept, and you learn, that learning insight. But in order to do that, all the major companies, few I have mentioned here, DDI or Ken Blanchard or Franklin Covey and so on, and there could be many, who has developed very innovative solutions even digitally to give you the same training completely online. The HR need to make a business case, and that's one of the challenge to all my HR colleagues on this call. Because the CEOs are going to ask, Vijay ji and his colleagues are going to ask every HR member as to where do I invest in learning and development, and what is your business proposition? What is that value that you will bring on the table with the change context? And therefore, HR is required to look at what is the return on expectation. The expectations are going to be set by the business leaders. Are you ready not only to deliver the training, but also are you ready to also develop the capability to deliver the training digitally, creating a virtual environment as if we are together and yet learning the same thing? I think I'll spend a couple more minutes in terms of future of learning. It's a very interesting topic itself. The first thing that I realized that it's a rise of capabilities over the skill. You have all the skills to deliver, but the capability to deliver is equally important. Your infrastructure, your people's ability to leverage the technology is equally important. Content is still a king, but focus is the key. Now, every company's business is all about delivering the content to their participants and making the participants ready, upgraded, upskilled to take the challenges of the business. But the way you deliver it requires a lot of focus. And in a virtual world, you cannot just do the same way what you used to do when you used to deliver the program in person as a facilitator. Organizations are going out of their space to the specialist people, consulting organizations, to develop a content that can be delivered through photos, videos, quizzes, and a lot of gamification. All that is coming with a focus as a key. And the most important third part is that learning experience or the learner's experience is the center stage. We are already shifted. It's very difficult, my friends, and all of us know, even when I go for a coffee, in a coffee break of 10 minutes, I am looking at my mobile maybe more than 20 times in 20 minutes, which means that our attention span is reducing day by day with social media playing the role, complicated further in the VUCA world with the COVID-19. So we are already shifted. People have gone onto the mobile, a small bite learning. Employees can get the teachings or employee can learn really hands-on. They are into the car, they are into a cafeteria. It is just in time, just for me, on my mobile, and a very small bites that I will carry the insight, which I can use real time and right time. I think there's one function that really changed and transformed visibly within just 1 year is this learning and development. I would touch upon a couple of topics, and one is about the HR policies. And I think my colleague Umesh Kulkarni, who would be delivering on the sweeping changes coming in view of the law. All the HR people, the good organizations have an HR manual. So employees are absolutely clear if they want to apply for leave, if they want to take a break, if they want something different, if they want to claim expenses, if they want to travel. There is a system, there's a framework, there's a governance to framework. And all these is going to be relooked, is going to be revisited in order to make the HR operations at excellence. We also need to look at, can we incentivize the people who are working remotely? They are spending time from their home. They are in fact more constrained, they are more carrying the stress than someone coming to the office as well. How do we embrace the flexibility and freedom? How do we express the gratitude through our framework of processes? And that is something where the HR policies will come into picture. The other thing is about the safety. And I think, as I said earlier, the COVID, we don't know how long it is going to stay, but it looks like it's going to be hard and long. We see the news that 6 states, again in India, there's a spike in the COVID cases. And we don't know what could be the restrictions coming in. So finally, as an organization, we need to develop something called as safety culture. Now, safety is the word that everyone speaks. And at many times, if the tone is not set from the top, it becomes a lip service. I know all the organizations have actually a lot of safety protocol in their premises, but that is something as a have to culture. But how do we bring the want to culture, that I want to be safe? And therefore, it goes much beyond just the procedural part as to how to follow the safety, to a cultural part as to why I want safety. And I think that's our responsibility as a community as well. When we see on the road, I'm in Chennai, and I'll tell you very frankly, 50% people might not be wearing the mask. One of the big challenge for the HR and the social workers is that we have lost, in a way, an opportunity to build a safety culture. If we build that safety culture, which exists in some of the countries, you take the case of Japan, when I speak to some of the colleagues, that it's very common that they use the face mask. It's very common that they work from home if they're not well, but we are not like that. So how do we develop this safety culture? And safety culture needs to be visible. Are you practicing the mock drills? Is there a procedure in the place to get a safety information? Is there a process that if you find any suspect, any employee suddenly develops a temperature, suddenly develop a loss of sense of smell? How are we going to manage that person in the workplace? What's going to be our message? How the communication will happen? How equipped we are to treat that person? And all that would come as a part of safety culture. I think safety culture is another opportunity for the HR as a challenge as to how do you develop a safety culture, moving from how to want to. I would like to spend a couple of minutes on this topic called as working from anywhere or borderless working, working from home. Of course, they have an advantage. We do not spend the time in commute, the cost in commuting. Offices may not require to have the same infrastructure. We will have less traffic stress. Those are some of the advantages. We can also have the divergent workforce working for us. All that are the advantage. Coincidentally, when I looked, and people earlier thought that working from home means a lot of flexibility, but we found people are more punctual because you have webinars like this to capture, and you cannot afford to be late there. So people have become more outcome based and more punctual, while the attention is at the same time losing. So these are some of the remote working challenges and advantage. But as a whole, the HR community is asked by the business leader as to how do we bring the culture of remote working work. And then there are lots of challenges. There are perspectives even from the employee side. Is there a willingness on the part of the employee? Cities like Mumbai, maybe like Hyderabad, maybe like even Chennai, where the each family may have 4 or 5 members and person may not have a separate room. How do we make sure that the person would work without any disruption? Is the company offering an infrastructural setup, security of the data, incentivizing of work from policies? Are there any guidelines placed in terms of work from home? How do you measure whether the people are connected socially and emotionally? And what are the protocols in terms of assessing the performance and then the frequency of the performance when everybody starts working from the work from home? It looks to be easy, but difficult to follow. And not that everyone can work from home. So initially there was a lot of enthusiasm, and it worked probably well earlier in the IT industry. We all know that companies like Tata Consultancy Services have taken a challenge even to move 75% of their workforce, and it runs in lakhs, in thousands. I guess it works in more than 3 lakhs of employees in TCS. And imagine that they are shifting 75% of their manpower working from home. Also requires a lot of customers' consent, requires a lot of security measures in the place and a change in the culture. But when it comes to manufacturing, it may not be possible. So all in all, the remote working is going to stay here. But in my opinion, it would be a hybrid model, and it would be a need-based. It may vary from company to company. It may vary from percentage. It may vary between male and female. It may vary between function and function, but it's going to stay. The HR challenge is that how do we embrace working remote working? Now I'll take a pause for here and shift the topic to some of the interesting thing that our president of INFA has actually requested if we have some data. And I'm so happy that the HR subcommittee and the industry practitioners of you have actually given us a lot of input, and for the benefit of everyone, we are looking at how does the salary forecast and relevant other matters are looking in 2021. So if I look at salary forecast, typically in the life science industry, generally our animal nutrition, health, or the pharma companies, pharma related companies, service, equipment, manufacturing, all that comes under a life science industry, which has comparatively to other sectors has done extremely well, being an essential service as well. They have an increment percentage benchmarked between 7.8% to 9.1%, which is an annual increment. Now within this play, you can still further make it as to how much you want to give to your super performance, to the average performer. But mind you, this percentage is excluding the promotions and market correction. So this is an interesting insight that I earned. But there are lots of other impact. In terms of appraisal still employees are asking what's going to be the protocol. And there's at places no response from the management that gives a clarity. There are managements who are absolutely valuing the flexibility and freedom of the employees. And with the new laws coming in, and I'm sure Umesh will spend some time on it, well, we remain 48 hours work in a week as per the government mandate, but government, I think, is also giving us the freedom. You can work only 4 days or 5 days covering those 48 hours. Health and wellness is the focus. And then companies are giving reimbursement in times of one-time infrastructure support. Maybe your house may need a different chair, different table, different gadgets to work you remotely. And also they are incentivizing every month as a COVID allowance, apart from the reimbursement and mobile and internet. Now, what's important in terms of our industry is that the competition of talent is absolutely anticipated. 2020 has not seen a much of attrition, and thanks to the COVID. Otherwise, the life science industry and animal nutrition and health industry goes through a turnover which runs into double digit, maybe 16%, 18%. But now the skill sets are in demand, and therefore talent pool is becoming more and more scarce. It would be required to note that there are certain hot roles, the hot segments in terms of hiring the job and in terms of even retaining those jobs, retaining those people. And those more comes from customer facing employees, mainly in the functions of sales, marketing, product management, general management, higher role. A general management like a general manager, like a COO, CEO, there's a lot of demand in managing and steering through your company in the view of pandemic to the successful company. We expect attrition just like pre-COVID, maybe more than, maybe touching the two digit or little more. And then there is always a high replacement cost. Our industry at many places, in many positions, we do not have the industry ready talent. And therefore, upgrading, upskilling your talent is important, but more than important is retaining them. And that's where retention with the competence becomes the crucial. And there are a couple of challenges that HR faces is that market pricing, or what we call it as a salary range. Taking any example, a person who is working in a sales as a territory sales officer, veterinary officer, territory sales executive. So there are lots of variety of titles for the same role. And those titles are players by which the market is driven. And the market pricing, the salary range is very, very fluid. So it becomes much more important for all the employers or for all the organizations as to how would you create your employer brand in the market. Now, these are some of the takeaway. We are thankful to the Mercer, Evan Vivid, Towers Watsons, and even Deloitte and few other partners who supplied us this information. It's very much there in the public domain as well. The last thing I would like to touch upon before we take up the summary and then hand it over to Umesh ji is that amendments coming in CSR. And when I say this, CSR is in place from 2014, and in 2020, government has brought many changes, very sweeping changes, and that would become CSR more accountable. Will offer an opportunity to a company to really look and be focused on the CSR. The definition is changed to match the current challenges. Then, from becoming directional so far earlier, now it is becoming mandatory. Earlier, it used to be explain or comply, even if you don't spend 2%, which is the mandated portion of your net profit of last 3 years average. It wasn't mandatory before, but now it's becoming mandatory. Companies would be asked, if you are not spend the money, to open the account, which is called as unspent CSR, and keep their money. If you don't spend it in the next couple of years or 3 years, government may ask you to transfer it to some other fund as well. Now we implement the CSR project with the help of NGOs, foundations, societies, some kind of implementing partner. And then there is a requirement of the government whether those partners are well registered or not. Do they have the whatever section 12 exemption under income tax or not? Do they have the PAN card or not? Do they have the history of working successfully for 3 years above or not? And there's an increased control by the company secretary specifically, because this particular CSR comes under the Companies Act and not under any of the Labor Act, although it directly relates to HR, marketing, and a company as a whole. So there's an increased control, and we all know that company secretaries are now governance professionals. So they have one additional responsibility to ensure that work schedule are happening, money is spending, projects are monitored and evaluated, and the programs are conducted in a very project management methodology manner. And the last thing is, are we really creating the impact on the society, which is the purpose of CSR? Are we helping our community to build a strong India, to build a strong world, to build a sustainable world? So if you are spending money more than certain threshold, you are required to actually take a scientific study in order to create an impact creation assessment. And that's about the CSR. So I'll come back and would just take you a couple of slides as to what we spoke so far. The pandemic, we had gone through 4 phases. I call it as reaction, response, continuity, and we are looking for sustainability as to how do we thrive in order of this new VUCA, new normal, new change. Technology is powerhouse. It would change everything, but how do we use it? And where do we use it? Where do we invest it? What is my business challenges? But when it comes to HR, when I speak to many of our colleagues practically into a mid-size and large organization, be it a global or be it a local or the domestic, irrespective of the size, HR is still struggling to find out a one HR platform that will deliver the entire HR functionality in terms of the COVID-19. Employee, we saw that it's going to be a challenge. How do we attract, hire, engage, or even depart? You know, it's like an LIC, Jindagi ke saath bhi aur Jindagi ke baad bhi. You know, our employees are our brand, be it even an ex-employee. And how do we create that brand with our employees existing or otherwise sustainably? In terms of learning and development, it has changed. It's the short duration, small bites, on go, customized to the need of every person. It would help in upgrading, upskilling, and it would also help in capacity building. That's the focus of the learning and development. The 5th is about employee experience. Employee engagement is all about employee experience. While you are working for the profits sustainably, and when I say sustainability, it is the growth as well as the profit, as well as this, what we call it as ESG, environment, social, and governance, or what we call it as people, planet, and profit. So we take care of the Mother Earth as well. In the same way, while we are taking care of the entire stakeholder, the center stage is our employee. And how do we create an experience for the employee so that employee become more competent, retained with us, and contribute to the all stakeholders for the better the society. The another 5 that comes in for me is office working. Remote working is going to stay here, maybe in a hybrid mode. Performance management has completely changed. It's frequent, a lot of conversation. You require a lot of training to your managers as to how do we conduct the conversations, because there's no body language, there is no in-person presence. And then employee and customer centricity are another 2 things. While customer centricity, each one of us want, we are dedicated to serve the customer. In the success of customer, we see the company's success. But it is well said by one of the author that employees first, that how far you are really taking care of your employees, how far we are developing them, how far we are measuring their engagement. And there are a lot of tools available, maybe a Gallup, maybe a Great Place to Work, maybe a Dave Ulrich model, or maybe customized to your company. But some process where you take care of the employees and employee becomes competent, stay with you and contribute to you. The last thing we just spoke is about a CSR. And finally, the leadership, the top of the organization. The tone is always set by the top. The leaders are the one who actually shows us the vision, develops the mechanism in order to implement that vision. And nowadays, the demand from the leadership is that they all are speaking with a lot of gratitude, empathy, great communication from time to time, developing the trust and showing that we are caring, not only showing, demonstrating the safety and well-being. I think these are the 10 takeaway in terms of the COVID as I look at changing perspective of the HR. I would not like to spend much time. I think change is the way of the life. We need to align it, we need to adopt it, and we really need to embrace it. That's all at this moment from my side. I'm sure you will have a lot of queries, and we would probably take it with the help of Dr. Manjunath and subcommittee as we finish and complete the other presentation from my colleague Umesh ji. With this, I would stop for a while in sharing my presentation further and would invite my colleague Umesh ji Kulkarni to take us through the insights as to what is changing in terms of the employment and labor law and how it is changing the entire world, especially in India. Over to Umesh ji.
Yes, thanks Devendra for wonderful insight on the current situation and way forward on the sustainable things. Now, second part of the presentation, I'll just launch my presentation. Yes, Dr. Manjunath, is it visible clearly?
It is very much Umesh.
Yes. So, very good morning to all industry colleagues, the Infa team member, all the business leaders here, and all the HR fraternity members from the animal health companies. First of all, thanks to HR subcommittee for organizing this and for Info for giving this platform. It's very important subject. So I'm going to talk brief details about the labor codes and updates on the labor codes. So this is a very important topic and subject. First part of presentation, my friend Devendra has just now completed, and we talked about the change and sustainability. Now with the new changing things, what he has concluded his presentation, change is a part of life. So when we talk about change is a part of life, again, this is a big change coming up on our way. So before going to the presentation, I just want to ensure that when we are talking about this change, we need not have to bog down or take a pressure of anything. Of course, change is a part of life. So what labor code is bringing. So this journey has started. I think that there was discussion because if you see our labor laws, those are been framed at the time of independence and some of them prior to that, and subsequent amendments came into the picture as per the need and requirement of the industry. Now, why it is a big change? Because we were talking about labor laws earlier. Now it's a labor code kind of thing. So this discussion started somewhere in 2004. The Ministry of Labor has thought on reforming all the labor laws, and since then this journey started. But practically speaking, 2019 was the year where actually whatever thoughts which were been put in by earlier team members and need of the requirement, the team has worked on that, and then the first labor code came into the existence or was been passed in 2019. That was
Umesh,
code on
just
wages.
an interruption. Your slide needs to change to the next.
Yeah, I'm coming to that.
Yeah.
So when you are talking about this clarity, I mean the labor code updates, what it brings to us, let's see an update that these are the reforms. So all 44 labor codes are been subsumed. So the first code which came into the existence was code on wages, which was the bill was been introduced in July 19, and subsequently the act was been notified into August 2019. Now the current situation, if you see for this particular code, the draft rules have been notified in July 2020, which are available on the public domain, and final rules are been yet to be vetted. So any law becomes a law. So of course it has been passed in both the houses. Post that, the state rules and central rules has to be notified. So as of now, it is already passed. All these 4 codes are been already notified as a bill, and subsequently rules are been awaited, and the date of notification for all these code has to be yet to be decided. Second is the code on social security. It has all 9 acts. So in the next slide, we will see what all these acts are. Then the occupational safety, health and working conditions, which is again code 2020, which is also been already notified, and the drafted rules are available, and it is gone again for the final, I would say, the final notification of the rules, and date of the code implementation is yet to be waited. And last is very important one is the Industrial Relations Code 2020. So this contains again the subsuming of all 3 acts. So altogether 44 acts are been subsumed, and these 4 codes are been already in the public domain. Draft rules are already there, and the whole process has been completed. So industry has to have a preparedness. So we are at the stage where it is available in the public domain, and we need to go ahead with understanding this, how it is, what it is, and what is changing. So just to understand it more in terms of which are the acts which are been subsumed into all these codes. So first code on wages, which we discussed. This was the first code in 2019, which was been passed by the parliament. So payment of wages, minimum wages, payment of bonus, and equal remuneration. These are the acts which were been subsumed. So this was the first act because it includes the state legislation as well as the central legislations. So both has to prepare certain kind of directions or the I would say rules, because when we talk about payment of wages or minimum wages, so there are central rules which are already in the place now. Each state will have to prepare their rules and put into places. So with each of these codes, in the next slide, we will see what is changing and how it is impacting the business. Next is the Industrial Relations Code, which was been passed last year, which is known as the Industrial Relations Code 2020. And these are the very important act which are now part of this particular code. The third one is OSH code, and it includes all the terms and conditions, especially for all the factory and other areas where actual physical working happens. So the terms and conditions defined, and again, all these acts are being subsumed into OSH code, and new directives are being put into the picture. The next is the social security code. So earlier, whatever various acts we had, a lot of amendments were been happening. If you see the Provident Fund Act itself, last 5 years, a lot of changes were been taken place. ESIC also, time and again. But all these acts are been now subsumed into code on social security. And one simple guidelines or the directions are been given into the social security compliance kind of things. So this is just an overview to explain that which all are the acts which are being subsumed. Now going forward, we need to understand new changing areas. So when we talk about what is changed now, these acts are being subsumed into this particular code. But for us, what is changing and what we need to take care. So first, let's go and understand when we talk about Industrial Relations Code, what is changing and what we need to take care. So this particular code, now if you see basic, all the, if you see in the BEAR Act, particularly for whether it is Industrial Dispute Act or some Employment Standing Order Act, all the provisions are been taken care what it was there earlier. But there is a new provision, that creation of the fixed term employment. I mean, days are not far that you will find that a manager can be recruited for 3 years period or 2 years period or 4 years period, and subsequently it can be amended out. So this fixed term employment has come into the picture, and maybe possibly with this multiple employment and all those things, a person can work for maybe 1 or 2 companies or different areas. That is possible. That is coming into the picture. So rule are yet to be defined. So with the rule, we'll able to know that what it means in terms of the fixed term employment, and can we go ahead with this kind of particular processes for recruiting the people in the future. Second is the fixation of the timeline for raising the industrial disputes. Earlier, if you see, if somebody want to raise an 7A inquiry into the Provident Fund, so it was possible, and maybe after 10 years also they could go back and ask the retrospective effect and all those things. So now the timeline in certain areas, I think not more than 5 years. So that has been fixed under the industrial dispute, and new ways of working, that beyond this particular timelines, you cannot raise any past industrial dispute. That is good. Then definition of worker or employee has been widened. Earlier, when we talk about worker, so it was purely defined under the Industrial Dispute Act, the definition of workman who's been doing certain kind of job, and he's not into the managerial capacity. But now with this new industrial code or the new definition, you will find that even up to certain level, there are definitions which has been changed, and manager is also coming under the definition of worker. So he can raise an industrial dispute, and he can be very well go as per the Industrial Relation Code into various litigations and rest of the things. Standing orders, which was again a part of the company's terms and conditions, misconducts, various misconducts, and dealing of a misconduct by an employer. Again, it was only applicable to certain certain states. Again, it was state-wise, there was a direction. Somewhere it was 100 employees, the standing order applicability was there. Somewhere it was again a certified standing order can be taken care. But now universal stand, specifically for all Indian companies, that the standing orders applicable for establishment has been made only for 300 or more workers. And then when we talk about workers, now the definition will not only remain to the worker, it will include also the managerial capacity employees as well. And under the Industrial Relations Code, they are talking about now introduction of the reskilling fund. In case of any kind of retrenchment is happening or any kind of separation is happening, and which is not by way of, I would say, appropriate process or some problem. So reskilling fund company will have to take care of this particular thing. So these are the major changes which are coming up. We are just touching upon the areas which are changes, but if you go in detail, of course, we will have to work on the impact analysis, what practice we are doing today, and what we need to change in this particular code. The next is OSH code, and this is more important when we talk about the working conditions, especially in the factories and other areas. So single registration for an establishment. So earlier, I think various factories, various registrations would have been required. Now with this particular OSH code, it will cover all the establishment at one go at different location. Then they have also put in, earlier there was a conciliation committee and rest of the things. So all those has been clearly removed now, and there is a process wherein the subcommittee will be formed within the industry, which will work across the industry and within that particular location as well. Then for all kind of employment, whatever place the individual is working, the appointment letter has been made mandatory under this particular code. Even though if you find that earlier the contract laborers were been working, but then we are not sure. So it will be now responsibility of a principal employer to ensure that their fixed term employment or the contract letters are been, the appointment letters are been there, and it is in the right perspective and it has valid document kind of thing. Then they also work on the modification of the definition of the contract labor. So specifically, there were two different acts, the Interstate Migrant Workers Act and then the Contract Labor Act. So certain kind of modification had done, and each individual organization will have to also make the compliance in terms of maintaining the data for the migrant worker and compliance in terms of the contract labor. Of course, with the changing things, woman is also working, and a proper consent will be required in case any of the women has to work beyond 7 o'clock. And then there is again an amendment that night shift for the women is also now been allowed. But of course, procedure and practice will have to be followed in particular establishment, be it in a shops and establishment or be it in factory kind of thing. So prescribed format and compliance will have to be take care. And they also are talking about the additional clarity provided of the core and non-core activities. So earlier this provision was been there, but there was no compliance to this. So which area of your particular business you can go ahead with the contract labor and which area you cannot go. So core and non-core areas are been clearly defined now, which was not defined, and a lot of litigations were pending in the court of law. Still they are going on. So before deploying these contract labors, again, you will have to follow the direction and guidelines, and there is a specific compliance and returns which you will have to submit in order to ensure the compliance on this particular area. So with these changes, again, going forward, when we talk about code on wages, which is a big change because this was been already passed in 2019, and I think we are now close to 2021. So it's been 2 years. And why this particular code was been passed in 19? So that it has a direct, indirect impact on the industry basically. So wages is again very important factor of all the employees. Of course, each one of is looking out for these things. So what exactly this code on wages has brought the change? When we talk about the wage, so in particular wage code, now the definition of wages have been defined, which is again an universal. So under the Provident Fund Act, the definition of wage was different. Under the Payment of Gratuity Act, it was different. So now with this changing thing, a simple definition has been derived. And whatever wage we are getting, gross wages, 50% of that wages, we will have to take care of all the retirement benefits. That is a big change which is coming up. And that is how we will have to see that wage structure of each organization, how it is, what it is. And then it is again making impact on the mode of the wages. So of course, all the transactions has gone now digitally, and timelines which were already defined But again, there was no compliance to that. So now every organization will have to comply and give ensure that by particular date the wages are being paid, the mode of payment and all those things, and we'll have to reconfirm digitally and make the concurrence or the confirmation to the respective authorities. Then fixation and capping of the allowances, which was already part of earlier payment of wages, but now with new definition, when we submit the returns, of course authorities can see it, the deduction part and rest of the things, which was not earlier. Unless they come for an inspection, it was not possible, but with new guidelines and new rules, it would be in the place. Certain guidelines on the wage settlement and termination of employment. So in the future, again, it is under discussion that the law on the termination will come into the picture, and probably going forward for any kind of direct termination or a separation of an employee, some amount of maybe salary for, I mean, there is a discussion still, it's not become a law, but possibility that maybe an compensation equivalent to 9 months will have to be paid to the individual employee. But here specifically, when we talk about the existing law, they are talking about the procedure to be followed. If it is, because earlier the definition of manager was not covered under the workman, even then you have to terminate a manager, the proper inquiry proceedings will have to be followed, and accordingly the process will have to be completed. Principle of natural justice to be followed. So all the guidelines are been given, so scope has been widened little bit. In certain kind of misconducts and mishaps where the termination happens or the separation happens, the disqualification of statutory bonus has been given. So again, these guidelines would be applicable, and anybody not following these guidelines, there are punishable, punishments are been there in terms of the fines and other areas also, if these charges are been proved. Again, code on wages, this again the universal definition of wage which I talked to you, that earlier it was different, but when we talk about wage now, specifically when we want to talk about this particular area, so what they have excluded in the definition of wage is statutory bonus. It will be not part of any wage. HRA and utilities, that HRA what we are paying to individual employees. Any kind of gratuity amount which we are paying is not part of wage. Then employees' contribution to the PF, pension and interest, whatever which we are paying. Retrenchment compensation and ex gratia amount, what we are paying to the employee. Some paid to defer work expenses, and any kind of commission, conveyance, traveling allowance, rest of the things. Other than this, anything which you pay in the salary will become part of the wage, and 50% of the total wages, the employer will be liable to pay the retirement benefits to the employee, and same way employee will have to contribute those amount of percentage to his retirements. Again, with changing things, the gig economy is coming, so they have created a platform and employment for gig workers, and again the compliance has to be maintained there. If you look at all the codes, I think earlier the penalties and then the punishable actions were been very less, but now the penalties have gone up to the level of maybe 1 lakh, 2 lakh and 5 lakhs. And if it is happening repeatedly, even they can go ahead with the cancellation of the license of an establishment. So purpose is that the compliance has to be there. Of course, I mean, with changing things, all the social security things and rest of the things will be connected and covered to the Aadhaar, and it will be also taking care of an unorganized sector employees, which can become the part of the social security, and they will also have to be taken care in terms of the compliance part. Now, what all these code has an impact on the employees when I want to see myself as an employee. So it will have an increased coverage and liability for individual employee, because when we're talking about the definition of wages, of course earlier on my basic only I was only paying the provident fund, the gratuity was been received on the basic amount. So with the definition of wage and then applicability, my contribution to the ESIC and PF will increase drastically. That change will be there. It may not be a retrospective effect, but of course, whenever we are prepared and ready, we'll have to take care of this. Increase in the quantum of gratuity payment. the employees in the future will be receiving much more gratuity amount. Quarantine and creche facility mandatory for the specified employment. So it would be again this maternity benefit amendment came last 3 years back, but rules were not been still framed. So rules are been already in the place, and all the establishment will have to take care of this particular thing, that any employer having more than 50 employees working at his place, he will have to mandatorily ensure the creche facility. And the canteen facility, as per the earlier Factories Act, they have kept it as it is, as a mandatory thing. Then option of opting out and opting out in terms of the social security scheme. So somebody who's been even having 2 employees and he's running a normal shop, he has option of coverage, and he can opt for the ESIC and rest of the benefit for them. Even a single individual who's working independently, he can opt for the ESIC. So scope has been widened, and probably in the coming time, the definition of, under that the ceiling also may go and increase again. Then again, it was earlier part of the Factories Act, but with now changing things, each employee will have to undergo the annual health checkup in the specified employment and establishment. And of course, health will become more important. And on the grounds of health, if he is not performing well, there would be rights to the employer to take care of his employment and work on the separation process. Next is payment of wages. So any kind of retrenchment, dismissal or resignation which was happening earlier, employee was running behind the employer for payment of wages, his final settlement dues or his salary and rest of the things, which was not happening depending on timelines. So there could be various reasons for this. For example, he has not submitted his NOCs, or there is a market outstanding, or there is some problem, or he has not submitted the document. So irrespective of all those things that would not taken into consideration, employer will be required to pay his salary and final dues within 48 hours of time. And if is not doing so, employee has all the rights to go to the local police authority and file a criminal complaint. So strictly this will have to be followed. So this was something which was a very big decision, and a lot of industry and I think the forums have represented this again. We don't know what will come out in the final rules, but of course there is a mandatory guidelines that within 2 working days the final settlement or the payment of the employee has to be made and his account has to be closed. Now going forward, what impact it will be having on the employer? So of course we discussed already the payment of gratuity and all the benefit that under the Social Security Code as your definition of wage is changing. So of course that would be impacting. It is all depend on the all individual employer how their structure is. Then they are talking about concept of holding the officer in charge. So under Social Security Code, you will have to define your officer in charger in your establishment, that he will be responsible, and for all the compliance he will be responsible, and he will have to ensure that things are being taken care. Of course, the negotiation part of the negotiating union was already there under the IR code, which is again now has been very much defined that they will have the right. So Trade Union Act has been already subsumed into this particular act, and they are talking about negotiating union, and there would be certain rights given to them under this particular law, and they can negotiate on behalf of the employees towards employees. This we already discussed, the concept of core activities. When we talk about that, there are core activities in which you cannot employ the contract labor, so which was freedom earlier. So now with things, this would be again impact on the labor, on the employer, and we will have to ensure that all these things are being taken care. Again, a specific and separate penalty for non-maintenance of the register. So earlier records were being maintained, but there were no specific penalties. But with this now, everything has been defined that digitally we will have to maintain, and of course submit on monthly basis. So there are registers which need to be maintained on monthly basis, quarterly basis, annual basis, and returns to be filed. And if it is not been done, of course digitally they will come to know the compliance of each organization, and there would be a heavy penalties. So all HR members, they would have a responsibility to ensure that all these registers have been maintained properly and returns are been filed well in time. And next is that when we talk about the contract labor and contractual things and legal perspective, so any kind of representation employer will have to put in the specific, like an office in charger, what we talk in earlier case, same will be applicable here, and he will be responsible to represent the employer in case of any representation for the deceased employee. Now, with this way forward, what we as an HR has to work upon, and what support we will require from the business on each of the area with this changing thing. First is the wage structure. So first of all, we'll have to look into the structural implications. We have to see our payroll, that what is our structure, and as per the code on wages, what we need to look into it, how we can align ourselves to that particular policy or the law. Then impact to the payroll structure. So when we talk about impact analysis, we have to do a self-assessment or the health checkup on the payroll part, that my total wage bill. So again, there is no clarity as of now. So when we talk about we are paying a car allowance, or we are paying a driver allowance, then we are paying an incentive. So whether this will be considered as a part of the, because still the rules are not been clear, so whether it will be part of overall wages or not. But of course, any kind of commission which we talk specifically in animal health, which is the incentive part, that would be not be a part of the total wages. So we have to see and study where my wage structure stands and what impact it is having on the total broad changes, and what I need to be ready for in case it has been implemented. Apart from this, when we talk about the change in wage structure, the financial implications in terms of the retirals, the contribution to the gratuity, contribution to the provident fund, and again the leave encashment part, that will go under impact. So both way, from employer side and from employee side, the individual organization and individual employee has to see the financial implications. And next is the minimum wages and its impact, because earlier we were having a state minimum wages, and each state was been allowed to work on the minimum wages. So what we find in Delhi, which is the highest minimum wages, if you go to the state like Jharkhand, it is a 50% of what we pay in Delhi. But with now the central law coming in place, there will be a minimum floor wage, the national floor wage, and based on that, state will have to be defined. So anytime it may not be less than the national floor wage. So the employment, which was for specifically for the fixed term employees or the contract employees, will go high. That impact we will have to see what it is and how it is. Then the service conditions, we have to see with the changing law, that in terms of the working hours, my friend Devendra had just now told that the government is thinking on now 4 days a week with maybe 12 hours per day working and all those kind of things. So we'll have to see and ensure that we don't go beyond the 8 hours per day limit, or maybe whatever specified by the government, and we need not have to pay any kind of overtime. So with the definition of manager or worker, again we'll have to see how it is impacting in terms of overtime. Are we liable to pay the overtime in any case if somebody is working more than specified hours? Of course, impact on the leave and wages. Again, leave part is not changing. It will remain as per the existing practice. There are no drastic changes. But of course, when we talk about service condition, how the impact will be there. And maternity benefit, we'll have to comply with having the facility as per the defined rules once they start implementing. So certain guidelines are already in the place, that it should be within 1 kilometer vicinity of your place of employment, then nursing breaks to be given. But final notification on the rules will define that what an employer will have to follow, which would be a compulsory kind of thing. Structural changes in terms of the local law and regulatory requirement, we'll have to see that it is just an thing, because it does not have major impact legally, but we'll have to evaluate and see that when we talk about legally structural changes. So as per the law, when we talk about office in charger, or earlier like it was occupier under the Factories Act and rest of the things, what role should be given to whom, and who would be responsible for all this compliance, and understanding the changes in the current scenario and practice, and how we can adopt those things to the local requirement. That would be one more requirement. Social security, we already talked on the impact to the company in terms of provident fund gratuity and bonus outflows, and then additional benefits which are been there. But in any case, this would be again not retrospective. By the date they will be announcing it, we will have to be ready for that, and we'll have to see that, and HR team member will have to suggest the possible ways of mitigating this financial impact. So each individual company will have to really look into their own structure, what it impacts, how it impacts, and be prepared and ready. So all these laws are available. The link I am providing, it's all available in the public domain. If you go to the Ministry of Labor website, all the laws are available there, and it is already in the public domain. In nutshell, I think these particular changes are, I would say, welcome changes, because it gives a clarity and overall laws. Earlier, we had various laws and various definitions. So it giving a clarity in one go that what it mean by wages, what it mean by labor, and all those things. Digital compliance is a new way of life. Earlier, various register under various things you have to maintain, and it was difficult. So now one platform under which all the codes can be compiled with. A lot of universal definitions they have come up with. It is giving a benefit in terms of ease of doing a business, and the compliance is very easy, provided it has been taken care appropriately. Government has come up with all this code, and we are in the cooling period now. My request to all the HR team member who have been attending this particular seminar, this is a cooling period. The laws are available. We can study all those things, and we can start working on the impact analysis, that if it comes tomorrow or some guidelines has been given that effective 1st April or 1st October we are going to implement it here, what it means to me and how I need to be prepared for this. So preparedness time is already available with all of us. We can get ready ourselves, understand the nitty-gritties into each of the area, and how we as an organization can comply with this. Then it is also been said that whenever there is a new law which is coming up, certain kind of guidelines and appropriate things are being provided by government also. So in terms of digital compliance and all those things will be published, and it will be available on the public domain. So with this, I would say it's a good initiative. It's a big change, but in the interest of employer, because it is giving a lot of clarity, and it will help us in the future to really take care of all the compliance part and ensure that the industry is really taking care of in an appropriate way. So with this, I would stop my presentation here, and if any question answers are there, myself and Dev would like to definitely answer all those things. So thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Dev, and thank you, Umesh ji. Vinay ji, Dheeraj ji, and Mr. Shetty ji. Can we take a few questions as per the time?
Thanks, Mr. Umesh and Mr. Dixit, for insightful information and on the HR perspective in new normal and new labor codes. It will be really helpful for all of our participants, and we already started receiving a few questions. And with my team, Mr. Dheeraj and Mr. Sudhir, they are already compiling and ready to ask the questions to the respective speakers. And further, I would like to request all the participants to put their questions on the chat box so that we can put relevant questions to our speakers. So over to Mr. Dheeraj, you can further ask the questions put forth on behalf.
Thank you, Vinay. And once again, thanks to Dev ji and Umesh ji for their presentations. And my question on behalf of the audience to Umesh ji is my current compensation structure going to drastically change and hit my P&L account?
I think it's a very good question, because it comes to P&L. So my answer to this is that it is all depend on the individual employer, depending on your current wage structure, what it is, because specifically what amount of basic you have kept against the total guaranteed compensation, what are the other allowances, what is the percentage of HRA which you are paying. So of course you will have to see the definition and you will have to assess the impact that if I am going to comply with the new definition of wage and again then work on my retirement contribution and rest of the things. Of course, yes, it will have an impact, and you will have to assess that impact and see and mitigate that how it can be taken care. So yes, post analysis of your own wage structure. If the companies are having lot of various wage structure, for example, there is no defined wage structure for maybe particular team or particular vertical and all those things, it is going to be further difficult. Then you will have to work on individual basis. But the companies with whom their universal wage structure, maybe for management, for non-management, for top management, in their case it would be little easy. But of course, it is going to hit on the P&L.
Thank you, Umesh. Sudhir, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dheeraj. There are a couple of questions for Mr. Dev also. Like because of the paucity of time and all, I have shortlisted a few of them. One of the question is, what is the top agenda of leadership these days? Over to Mr. Dev.
This is a question I think that all of us know very well. And I guess even the business leader Vijay ji is here. But what I assess with respect to the leadership, I think the topmost agenda for the business leadership is to return back to the business. And not only return back to the business, but back to the business sustainably. How do we thrive? Not only just come back. The second thing is that, am I delivering a trust? And when it comes a matter of trust, it's maybe a trust among the employees. Do they believe into the leadership? So they join in to the purpose. And also to the customers. Do the customers believe into the company? The community believes into companies. So developing the trust in an ecosystem is, I think, another challenge for the leadership. And I think the third skill set that I would really look at is that having an impeccable communication in the changed era of the COVID. So if I want to restrict only to these 3 points, that comes to my mind as my first response. I think there are lots of business leaders I could see on this call. They will have a variety of expressions on this, but this is what my opinion is. Thank you. Thank you for that great question.
No, you're well covered.
Okay, one question to both the speakers. I mean, anyone of y'all can answer this because this was there in both the presentations. So can you throw some light on what is gig economy?
Okay, Umesh, would you like to take that or?
You can go ahead.
Okay, so you just put a word. We have a Uncle Google or Auntie Google who can give you lots of information of what is gig economy in today's knowledge world. But to put it here, a gig economy is a kind of a temporary assignment, which means that we are moving possibly away with an opportunity of COVID. It was existing before as well, but it's now fueled with the COVID coming in, that an employee can work for 3-4 places. And it would be on certain contracts. And therefore, it is much more important as to what's going to be the terms and conditions and how we are going to navigate through. From the employer standpoint of view, because that employee can work partly, it could be also cost effective. The another thing is that we can literally fetch the talent from anywhere from the world to answer your question or your challenges of the businesses. So gig economy is nothing but a multiplicity of the employment with a short time, cost-effective and purpose-effective way combined together for the purpose of the company. It's a big topic. It has its own advantage and challenges as well. But we need to align with it. It's going to be a truth to the extent that government is also prepared, as Umesh ji was saying, that they would come out in what could be the social security for those gig economy as well. So it's already on the table. We only need to look at a time when it will be a complete reality in India. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, another question once again to Mr. Deb only. Mr. Deb, you talked about Gallup, GPW, Great Place to Work, and Dell Relish. Please explain briefly what it is.
I am not very sure whether I can explain it literally in 1 or 2 minutes, as we are coming in terms of time to 90 minutes has been scheduled by our managing committee. But let me explain in maybe in one word that today, traditionally or otherwise, your engagement and employee experience would make the workplace to thrive. At the end of the day, it is the people who are driving the business. Everything given. What is coming on the center stage in the boards is the people, and how do we navigate? Apart from other challenges, people still plays a role. And if engagement and experience is going to be on the center stage, then you have to have the way to measure it. So one of the valid tool internationally is a Gallup. So Gallup is one of the service provider. I'm not promoting, I'm not opposing, I'm not possessing them. I'm just saying professionally, they have an experience of 200 countries working for last 35 years, more than I think 80 lakhs observations made. And they come out with something called as Q12, which is 12 questions. And those 12 questions dedicates to the area as to what do an employee expects from the job. Are my needs, be it a social need, personal need, professional needs, the best at the work? And how do I measure it? So they have very assessed 12 questions and few descriptive questions that gets just over in 3 minutes and has a direct connection with not only the employee engagement, but also to the profitability of the company, sustainability of the business. That's about the Gallup. When it comes to Great Place to Work, I'm sure many of us knows this very well, that it's one of the institute who maps the people processes, irrespective of the businesses. And they have a business case that if you are the Great Place to Work audited and certified company, it is like an ISO 9000 and many other parameters that you are one of the wonderful employer to work with. You are the choice, in the hands of the employer to join you. Today, employees have a choice which employer to join. And there is an every effort made by each company as to how do I become the choice of an employee. So how do I become the employer of choice? I think that's where the Great Place to Work help, but it necessarily built on two pillars. The pillar is the pillar of trust and the pillar of performance. So it is building the character and competence at the workplace together in a very structural. That's about the, I think, the Great Place to Work. I think these two are the widely known tools. But in any way, as an organization, it would be worthy to really measure the engagement levels and then think through, reflect through as to how do we increase it for the thriving of business and the society. I hope this answers a bit.
Mr. Dheeraj and Mr. Sudhir, looking to the time, we can have one more questions. I think then we can address on the chat box and keep it on our website. So my request is that one question to each speaker.
So Umesh ji, there is one question for you. Are there any hidden indirect expenses which may enhance cost of compliance?
I think it's a good question because compliance point of view, I would say there is no indirect implications in terms of the cost. But when we talk about direct implications, something like maternity benefit, so giving the creche facility and other things. So indirect compliance cost, of course, you will have to work on software or maybe some partner or something like that, which can support you in terms of maintaining the register and rest of the things. And somebody who could really update and take care of this monthly updation of the registers digitally, because it would be mandatory. Otherwise, there are heavy fines if it is not been done, and it's also an punishable action. So, of course, direct, indirect cost would be there for the compliance part of it.
Thank you.
Okay. One question to Mr. Deb. What CEOs are expecting from HR in these times?
I think we have one business leader here, Vijay ji, and I think I'll try to represent on their behalf, though I'm also from HR, and we struggle to come up to the expectation of CEO, which is the hard fact and a challenging opportunity. But what I think that what you expect from HR in the current time, the basics have not changed. I think the basic is that do you have a domain knowledge as an HR? The second basic thing to be a successful HR, that do you have a business acumen? Are you really partnering with your business? And third thing comes is all about your values, integrity, and the skill set, the soft skill set that would connect the people, communication and all that. Now, given this, the current topics that has been taking the rounds on the CEO's table is that how HR is helping my business navigating this change. I think I'm thankful to COVID personally because it gave us a challenging opportunity to prove ourselves as to what HR can do for business. How do we really navigate that change? How deeply we can do it, how quickly we can do it, and develop the culture of agility. Today it is COVID, tomorrow something else would come, and every time we will have to align with the change. So how we really bring the culture of change is the way of life, apart from the competency building within the organization. And final thing, what CEO expect from HR is that HR is grounded well with the employees and they have a wonderful connect with employee. And they act as an employee advocate to come back and tell us as to what employee expect and are we meeting their expectation. I think this could be some of those summaries that comes to my mind. I think there could be many more points as well. That's a great question. I love that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Bhaskar, we can proceed further for a
few questions are there. I mean, I don't know how we can answer this. They couldn't get through chat box. Anyhow, if it
we can further put it on a reply on a chat box so that it remains in website also.
Yeah, you keep checking. I mean, sure. They have shared the link again. So
I think I can read a couple of questions from this chat box for a couple of organizers. Now, there is a question from Vijay Raghavan, who is asking, how is the industry planning to handle overtime tracking, especially for remote working, as most of the industry workforce is still remote employees or in field? So basically, overtime tracking, what is the way?
So let me just take the lead, because Umesh ji would tell me the compliance side, but let me share as to how do we deal with the field force. And the new things coming up ultimately is the outcome. Is my efforts turning into an outcome? And in order to achieve those outcomes, what is that fair effort that could be converted into a number of hours? So I think overtime would be considered more as a part of variable pay that directly relates into the performance parameter. It won't be paid like an overtime in an ordinary sense, but it would be embedded into the efforts that are resulted into the outcome and paid via an annual incentive, commissions, bonuses, or any other benefits. And those are required to be tracked by virtue of these specific goals and the outcomes. That's my take on it. Yeah. We have employees, all of us have the organizations where employees are located more than, even 100 locations across the India or the South Asia. So it is much more important. Nice question.
Yeah, another
of course, to support this, when we talk about legally, I think on the, it's a right question by Mr. Vijay Raghavan. Of course, some guidelines would come and some rules would be framed by the state government and central government, because it cannot remain unattended kind of thing, because everybody is working from home and there is a directive from the central government and state government, and it is going to be there for another few years. So based on those directions, I think we have to be a little watchful and see that what rules each state is framing, and according to that, we'll have to comply on that.
Yeah, thanks. I think there are a couple of important questions, so I'd like to take it up. One is that from Dr. Day, that our field force is still struggling to get appointments, particularly with corporate customers. Can Infra HR subcommittee do something about it?
So you have the question and you have the answer, Vijay ji.
Yes.
So I think we can discuss this offline and find out what can be done about it. It's not a state, because there are guidelines and restrictions from the customer side. We cannot really push our way because every corporate has a guideline. Like for example, till last month we had a strict guideline of no visitors in our company, which has eased from this month, depending on the need. And so I think we will take it up within the managing committee and then find out a way forward. What the question is, I think Dr. Day is trying to say is that, to be precise, most of the corporate customers have HR departments and have their own protocol to meet visitors. Infra can approach the HR department and bridge the gap. So I think that suggestion can be taken forward. It's more of an HR to HR engagement between the Infra member companies and the corporate clients. And can we find out a way by which we can have an agreement on enhancing the connect? I think that's the broader point. Yeah. So I think we can work on this. Definitely there can be an engagement with the HR of these corporate clients, and some proactive role can be played.
We'll try that.
Okay.
If there is no questions, then...
No, there is one comment, I think, from Mr. Pasricha, which is about one of the major changes in the routine HR can be objective setting and for activity and productivity and company rules, especially during the work from home. So there are standard guidelines, protocols, which have been in methodologies different companies have followed and adapted and developed. So it's not a question, it's a kind of a contribution that those good practices or those methodologies which various organizations have adapted and followed can be shared across, which will be beneficial for the industry.
Yeah.
So good thought from Mr. Pasrija. So that's all from the questions. I think over back to you, Dr. Manjunath.
Yeah. Umesh, if
Yes.
there is no questions, let us come to the conclusion. Before conclusion, Umesh, can you share the thing? Let me introduce this team, including me, Mr. Umesh Kulkarni, Devendra Deshit, Mr. Vinay Tiwari, Mr. Bhaskar Vardhan, Mr. Dheeraj Sharma, Ms. Shilpa Yadav, and Mr. K. Sudesh Shetty. This is our team, very enriched team, and they have put all the threads together to make this happen, make this webinar being happen. And then it is well supported by our MC team of INFA, and personally thank each one of them. So let me invite Mr. Bhaskar Vardhan to make a concluding remarks now.
Thank you, Dr. Manjunath, and it's a pleasure to sit through this whole webinar. It's been really exhilarating experience, right? So let me formally thank the President of INFA for your energetic support and active participation, and also all the MC members for your support, for this program. And I also seen many CEOs and MDs and head of businesses of different companies joining this webinar. It's really a very heartening, situation to see the kind of support and priority that as business leaders that you give on the entire area of people, which is very, very important and great motivation for the HR fraternity, right? And I also, want to thank, my own HR subcommittee team members. It's a great efforts from each one of you. Thank you so much. And not only that, I also want to, thank every members of HR fraternity from all INFA members. I see quite a lot of people participating, actively asking questions, and it's really nice how this webinar has been received so far. And I'm sure that this is a great beginning for us for many more important webinars to come in the space of HR, right? And they say, along with every challenge comes new opportunity. And in the last 1 year has been such an experience for all of us. And I was sitting and listening to Dev and Umesh talking and taking us through this whole changes that has happened. And I would rather say that HR fraternity has rose to the occasion to roll with the punches in coming out with the creative solution. Whether it is in terms of workforce deployment, whether in terms of technology deployment, whether in terms of assurance of performance, whether it is employee safety, the HR leadership of each and every organization within INFA fraternity has definitely rose to the occasion and contributed very nicely, and I really feel good about it. And it's all about rolling with the punches and how flexible you are. And it's amazing to see me being part of such a very matured and highly capable team. I really feel good about it. And I just want to close my remarks with just one assurance to all the members of INFA family and the individual members and individual organizations, and that we want to give our commitment and our assurance for continue to stay upfront and lead in days to come. And the pandemic is not yet over. We are talking about second waves. We are talking about variants. There are a lot more uncertainties than what was in the last 1 year. And which vaccine and the acceptance of vaccine. And as a lot of questions are coming here, then we were listening. And in terms of the new codes of wages and the changes that is going to be notified and implemented very soon, I'm going to, it will be an exciting journey for me and each one of us in the next 1 or 2 years to navigate and lead these changes on behalf of the businesses that we belong. So my assurance to every info organization and every member companies is that from HR subcommittee, we are there. We want to give our assurance to stand in the gap and lead this change, and so that our business continuity will continue and we will be more creative in the way we address our situation. So with these words, I really want to thank each one of you, and we are always available for any support. Thank you so much and have a great day.
I would like to personally clap for this entire team for a wonderful job. Great job done by this HR subcommittee. On behalf of managing committee, I would like to thank all of you, especially your chairman, Dr. Manjunath, who has personally involved himself into driving this, and all of you who have made significant contribution to it. Great job done, and I'm sure this is the way forward. And this presentation will be live on the same link for 24 hours, and later on it will be available online on a link. The presentations will be uploaded on our website. So thank you once again. Thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Manjunath.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for all of yours.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you.